13 days after the NHL trade deadline, where the Boston Bruins acquired Taylor Hall, Curtis Lazar, and Mike Sarge Riley of 98.5 The Sports Hub. Either way, the Boston Bruins have looked good, and then not so good at the same time. Find out what I mean and more on this, the 32nd episode of the Bruins Recap Show. Boston Bruins! So in those 13 days, like I said, the Boston Bruins played 8 games, going 6-2-0. 6 wins, 2 losses, all in regulation, for 12 points in the time span. 6 wins, all of them happened consecutively, all in a row, and they were against Washington, 2 against the Islanders, and 3 against the lowly, pitiful Buffalo Sabres. Not in that order, of course. I believe it was Buffalo, Islanders, Washington, and then Buffalo, and Buffalo again. Either way, that's a 6-game winning streak. That's 12 points against other teams in your division. Always good to see. They outscored their opposition 23-7 during those 6 games, including 2 shutouts by Boston Bruins goaltenders. However, in the last 2 games, and we have a couple of theories as to why this is. The Boston Bruins losing to the last 2 games in a row. Can't win them all, of course, but it was a 6-4 loss to the Buffalo Sabres, where the Boston Bruins, without Patrice Bergeron, that's a big part right there, they played a good hockey game for all of 10 minutes. 10, just 10. They were able to score 4 goals in 10 minutes. That should tell you all you need to know about the Buffalo Sabres. And also, earlier today, the Boston Bruins shut out by the Pittsburgh Penguins in a 1-0 loss where they just couldn't get anything done offensively. However, their goaltending and Jeremy Swayman and the defense overall kept Boston very much in this game, or in that game, I should say. So, with that being said, what exactly is the issue? First of all, the schedule. The schedule is the issue. As in April alone, the Boston Bruins, 17 games in 30 days, 3 sets of back-to-backs, and including travel for road games, respectively. Like I said, in just these 13 days, the Boston Bruins have played 8 games. 8 games. It's a brutal schedule. It is absolutely brutal. And of course, due to COVID protocols and, not wanting to get towns sick and people sick and players sick and staff sick, the Boston Bruins, when they're on the road and they're in a hotel, they cannot leave that hotel. At least that is my understanding of everything going on. So, last week, specifically, the Boston Bruins were left for Buffalo on Monday. Then they played Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday in Buffalo against the Sabres. And for that entire stretch of time, they stayed in a hotel in the city of Buffalo. 5 days in a hotel room where you cannot leave. I can understand there being a little bit of fatigue from that. It's not pleasant. And there's no kind of escapism. Like, you can't go out with your teammates to do kind of cool bonding stuff. Like previous years in Florida, where Brad Marchand and other players of the NHL or other players of the Boston Bruins would go and like fish and hang out and kind of do stuff. You just can't do it. That's just... Either way, the Boston Bruins look like a team that needs a day off. So, I know they're not going to be able to leave the hotel, but for tomorrow, where there is no game scheduled, please let this team have either an optional skate or the entire day off. They look like they need it. They look like they need to take from end of game, which was about 6 o'clock today, all the way to morning skate on Tuesday. Just take that time off. You really need it. And Furthermore about the schedule, the Boston Bruins, 7 games in 11 days to end the year in the month of May. So the schedule's not getting any easier. With that being said, you would like to have the opportunity to rest some of your top players like Patrice Bergeron, Charlie McAvoy, David Krejci, all the older guys. However, have you seen what the bottom 6 looks like? The Boston Bruins will not be able to rest anybody. The bottom 6 forward core for the Boston Bruins has just not been good enough. Not been good enough, not been good enough. So, in the last 8 games, the bottom 6, Curtis Lazar, Sean Kuraly, Nick Ritchie, Jake DeBrusk, Charlie Coyle, and yes, even Chris Wagner put up a combined 9 points between 6 players. For perspective, in those 9 games, Brad Marchand and David Pastrnak alone both achieved 9 points. So let's break it down. Curtis Lazar, whose play I like. I like what I've been seeing out of Curtis Lazar, the newly acquired centerman / right winger from Buffalo. He's looked pretty good. He, along with Sean Kuraly, Nick Ritchie, and Jake DeBrusk, all have gotten 2 points in the last 8 games. Charlie Coyle, with a whopping 1 point in the last 8 games, hasn't scored in about 28 games, I believe, which is utterly awful. And I don't know why he has still remained on the third line. And I'll get to that in a second as well. And then Chris Wagner with a whopping 0. Zilch, zippo, nada. Chris Wagner has been awful this season. Now, as far as the bottom 6, I say swap centermen. So Nick Ritchie, centered by Curtis Lazar and Jake DeBrusk, is your third line, just to see what it looks like. What harm is it going to do? And then your fourth line would be Sean Kuraly, Charlie Coyle, and Chris Wagner, or God forbid, anybody else who can play right wing. I have my equipment, I have my stick, I have my skates. I will show up to Pittsburgh for Tuesday. I will replace Chris Wagner if you need to. That's how bad Chris Wagner is. Anyway, there is some positives. There is some positives to talk about with this Boston Bruins team, and that is, as much as I pick on the bottom 6, I'm not saying the bottom 9 is atrocious, because the Boston Bruins have finally gotten a second line that actually produces points in the last 8 games. With that being Taylor Hall, David Krejci, and Craig Smith. In fact, the entire top 6 have combined and put together, at least individually, 5+ points. Brad Marchand, David Pastrnak having 9 points each. Taylor Hall coming to Boston from Buffalo. He is a Boston Bruin. 3 goals in his last 8 games with the Bruins. Add 3 assists for 6 points. For hindsight, in his entire duration with the Buffalo Sabres, he only scored 2. He scored 3 with Boston in 8 games. So Taylor Hall is loving being a Boston Bruin. And most importantly, David Krejci might actually be starting to get going, as he has produced 4 goals in the last 8 games. And that gives him a total of 6 goals on the season. Which I didn't think he was going to get 6 goals, and then we've had a great explosion of goal scoring from the second line. So Boston, depending on how things go, like I said, maybe move Curtis Lazar to the third line, see if anything can spark that line. I don't know, get Anton Bleed in there, get Carson Kuhlman on the fourth line. I don't know, make a change, see how it looks. Can't be any better, can't be any worse. And finally, first sidebar before we go into the big positive, let us quickly talk about how good of an acquisition from Don Sweeney was Mike Sarge Riley, who you acquired for a 3rd round pick in 2022. He has been a stud on the back end. Has some power play minutes on the top power play, as well as the second power play, as we've allowed Grizzly to get back into the lineup. And he's looked stellar. He's looked really, really good. up to 23 assists and up to, I believe, 7th or 8th on the team in points with just assists alone. It's very, very good. So hopefully he continues that great stretch of play as more defensemen get healthy and join the team for the remainder of the push to the playoffs. So the big positive that I want to get into, the Boston Bruins goaltending. Tuukka Rask, Yaroslav Halak, even though he is not 100%, hasn't had a start yet, but he is back from COVID. He did participate in the Buffalo game for the very tail end of it. And of course, Jeremy Swayman. Jeremy Swayman has looked incredible. The 22-year-old kid out of Anchorage, Alaska. It looks to be the future of the Boston Bruins goaltending. Rask and Swayman in the last 8 games both get a shutout. And for perspective, let's put this right here. The Boston Bruins goaltending, 3 out of 4 of the goalies that have played this season, top 25 in the NHL for goals against average, with Jeremy Swayman being number 2, Tuukka Rask being number 18, and Yaroslav Halak being number 23. Goaltending is not this team's problem, and it will not be this team's problem going forward. And if you say otherwise, for the time being, you are wrong. So the Boston Bruins will end the season with 9 games left to go. 7 of those are in 11 days in the month of May. But to end April, they will play a game against the Pittsburgh Penguins in Pittsburgh, and then they will play a game against the Buffalo Sabres before we hit May 1st. Now, the Boston Bruins have 1 game against Pittsburgh, the New York Islanders, and the Washington Capitals. All 3 of those teams ahead of you in the standings. It would be nice to get points on them, of course. So play your best against them. But Boston has 6 games against teams that are below them in the standings. The Buffalo Sabres for 2, the New Jersey Devils for 2, even though the New Jersey Devils have given the Boston Bruins fits. They will be out without Travis Zajac and Kyle Palmieri, who they traded away to the Islanders. So hopefully that's an easier game. And then, of course, 2 games against the New York Rangers, who will not lay down for you as they are trying to catch you in the standings. But you should be able to beat the Rangers. You should be able to beat the Sabres. You should be able to beat the New Jersey Devils. Those 6 games, you should get somewhere close to 10 points. In those, with 12 points available, you should be able to get at least 10 out of them. You should take 4 from Buffalo. You should take 4 from the Devils. You should take at least 2 from the Rangers, if not 4 as well. And then, try your best with the teams that are ahead of you. Because, depending on how things go, the East is still very, very tight in the standings. You're 6 points ahead of the New York Rangers. They're 5th. You're 3 points behind the Islanders. They're 3rd. And you're 7 points behind the top seed, the Pittsburgh Penguins. All 3 of those teams can make some noise, and you should be able to stay ahead of the Rangers. You possibly, depending on how you play against the Islanders and how you play going forward, should be able to jump them for 3rd. And I don't know if it's going to happen, but the Penguins, depending on how they play for the remainder of the schedule, if they falter in any way, you could potentially catch them. It's possible. You could also potentially catch the Washington Capitals. It might not be as likely as, say, catching the Islanders with only 3 points ahead, but it's plausible. It's very plausible. It's very doable for the Boston Bruins to get out of 4th place and maybe be higher in the standings. We shall see. But if the season was to end right now, the Boston Bruins would be playing the Pittsburgh Penguins, the number 1 seed against the 4 seed. That would be your first round matchup, Boston, Pittsburgh. So, in the comment section down below, tell me who you would like to see in the first round between the Boston Bruins, who you would like to see them play in the East, and any and other things that you'd like to talk about, brought them down in the comment section below. Subscribe, as always, like this video, and check out all my fun social medias. I will put them down in the description box below, and we will see you next time. Possibly either before the season, with 1 week to go left in the season, or potentially at the end of the season. We shall see how things go on the next Bruins Recap Show.